Hey, I trust that you are in air conditioning someplace. You know, the weather was so good for so long, but now feels like Texas in July. So, hey, we're so glad that you chose to be with us. In the studio today, we have Kelly James. Hey, Kelly.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Man, I'm honored to be here with the legend, Mr. Clay Wallace.
Your wife needs to let you out more often, brother.
True story.
Tell us about your family.
You know, I've got a beautiful family. Been married for 31 years. Have two.
Were you guys even out of grade school at that time?
We were of age. No one had to sign off. So yeah, we met in church. My pastor introduced us, and we just been at this and have two grown daughters that are married, and I'm finally in the grandpa club. I'm a G-pop is what
G-pop.
my name is until she grows up old enough to alter that name. So G-pop it is until she says otherwise.
Yeah,
but just loving life, just blessed, blessed.
Yeah. You and I actually have a pretty unique relationship beyond we've known each other in ministry, but because of your wife.
Yeah.
Your wife's mom is?
My wife's mother's passed away, is Gay Wright. She's part of the Wright family. Was part of Gospel Lighthouse back in the day. Of course, I didn't know anything, but I've heard all of the great stories, and many of my wife's family was a part of that incredible church in its heyday. So a great legacy for sure.
Her uncle is Mike Morrie.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Mike's a really good friend. Know Mike for... Once again, back to the Lighthouse days, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike and Charlotte are really precious people. You're currently the lead pastor at Pathway of Life Church, right?
That's right, yeah. Been there, took over leading the church after serving on staff for many years, and I started in 2021, right in the middle of COVID, the first Sunday of 2021. So here you go, take over this historical, great, blessed church.
By the way, we're going to be doing this online.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. We were meeting in person, but we were just, you know how it was back in the COVID days. We were trying to all find ourselves. So, yeah. So blessed to be able to lead this great church.
So you guys are still doing online, right?
Oh, yeah, we still do online. You know, we were probably like many churches. We weren't doing online until we had to do online, and then it became this hybrid thing that most churches do now, to where we obviously meet in person and try to reach those that are still at home, still at the house. So, it's a great opportunity.
It's surprising to me how many people have not come back to church.
Yeah, I think it's the mystery of every pastor trying to figure out how things have changed since the COVID thing. But you just adjust. That's one thing about what's so beautiful about the COVID thing, is that the church survived, and the church thrived, and the church got creative. That's the one thing, is there's no. I think the church is the most creative entity in the world, because to be able to find a way, it's like, how we're going to survive when we can't gather, was just, it was amazing. It's amazing how we all came together and still spread Jesus to everybody in a time that people needed to know that God is still God in the middle of it all.
Yeah, for sure. You guys are also in an interesting project, different season in life. You guys are building a brand new facility on Beltline, right?
Yeah, Beltline. We're in the southeast part of Dallas, the Mesquite, Dallas. We're building in Sunnyvale, a small community in that area, and that was one of my responsibilities when I took over leading the church, was, hey, go build a new building, and I'm
welcome to being a lead pastor.
Yeah, take it over for obviously my pastor, who is legendary, in our community, and then, by the way, go build a church, and didn't have a clue how to do that. Still don't have a clue how to do that, and
I was hoping you're going to get some wisdom today, right, Chris?
When I get to the end of it, I may can write a chapter in a book of it, but
I don't know.
But it's
probably a book.
It's a lot of learning for sure. But I have a great, patient, beautiful church that just supports us through it, and have a great team around me. So you know how we do. We figure it out one day at a time.
So you guys are still meeting in the old facilities, is that correct?
Yeah, we sold our facility into a charter school. A great man who leads a charter school in our area. We were able to sell the building, and it was a great fit for them, and gave us an opportunity to step into a new season as far as facilities are concerned. And so we still meet there. They're so gracious to allow us to continue to be there and to meet there on Sundays. We have had some adjustments as far as the facilities and what is conducive. So it was an interesting dynamic to be able to take our people and go, hey, this is no longer our building, and so you can't have full access to that, and that's now a classroom, and it's not a kid's room anymore. And so our people were just, and have been, just troopers, just adjusting to that dynamic of like, this used to be ours, it's no longer ours, and we just need to adjust. And that's when we just built, like, we're the church, buildings are just tools to be able to reach people, and just try to keep that perspective in place, because it can get real cloudy real quick if you don't.
Yeah, I think you hit you kind of sing in our song there, a building is a tool.
Yeah.
The challenge you get into, particularly like right now, okay, you guys are in the middle of it. You know, you're sacrifice is kind of the name of the game, right?
Yeah, definitely. And but you know, we just really just poured in fresh vision of who we were as people, and it was like God set it up, because you know, I know this is not about COVID, but COVID set us up, because we realized, hey, we can exist without a building, and so it really was it laid the framework of going, okay, let's just continue with that mindset, and just realize that this is just a tool, and we can use it as a tool, and no more, no less, and we'll just continue to do ministry, continue to use creativity to reach people, and of course the presence of God. You know, the presence of God doesn't need a brick and mortar. I mean, God can move anywhere, and so that's what we've seen happen.
You've been at Pathway. I think you told me, I always forgot, 90-something. What year did you get there?
Yeah, 93 is when
So that was, let's see, what was the name of that street the church is on? I don't remember.
It was Holcomb Road.
Holcomb, that's right.
Yeah, they're in Pleasant Grove area, Dallas, Yeah, so it just, I was a musician. I was already traveling, doing music, you know, and that kind of ran its course. We were young and, you know, didn't know how to run a ministry, so I just went to church and just said, okay, I'm just gonna come to church and just seek the Lord, and just whatever I need to do. My parents went to the church. I knew Pastor Danny, and they had a Christian school back in the day that I attended, so there was a history there, and so I just came and I just sat in the pew and just said, hey, you know, I'm here to serve, and I remember Pastor Danny just saying, hey, why don't you come up? I'll just give you a few bucks, because I didn't have any money, and I remember he gave me this opportunity to organize cassette tapes. You know, that's back in, show my age. You know, it was the master cassette. That was, you know, you recorded the services, and so I remember just taking years and years of cassette tapes thrown into a closet. He said, organize these. And so I remember doing that and then laying everything out. And I remember just saying out of my mouth, I said, God, if I have to create cassette tapes for you to get the glory, I'll say yes to it. And it was like, that was my beginning at Pathway. I wasn't on the stage. I wasn't even I wasn't a part of the band. I wasn't leading worship, wasn't singing, wasn't doing any of that. I was just saying yes to just a small task. And that was my beginning. That was my way in. And I've just learned that sometimes you have to say yes to unrelated topics, unrelated things that maybe that is not even connected to your gifting. And I think you have to be trusted. When the Bible talks about it, you're faithful with the little, He'll make you rule over many things. And so I believe that is so key when it comes to ministry. And I just remember that being that was my step into Pathway of just saying yes to that, you know. So, and here I am 32 years later, you know, and still trying to say yes to whatever God says, you know.
So you were there during the building, when the building was built, the new building was built on Holcomb. Is that correct?
So they had just built the new building, and I was there. The church was in a really great season of growth, and I was there when they extended the side. So they knocked out the walls.
I remember that well.
Yeah, and so that I was on staff at that point, but the building had already been built at that point. So, and then we stayed there all the way through until we moved to our location on Military, where we still meet, and that was in 98. So it was a good training ground, Holcomb Road, and it led us to there, and then so we're just continuing to move forward for sure.
So you were on staff there, eventually became, well, for a long time you were the worship leader for the church. Worship leaders don't normally stay very long, right?
Yeah.
What made you stay?
Yeah, that's so good. I never was really attracted to lateral moves, especially as a worship leader. And I have plenty of great friends that are worship leaders, have been worship leaders, that have been to several churches. So this is not a knock on anybody, but for me, I just didn't want to go to another church and go, okay, it took me 4 years to get the bad singers off of the mics, and I didn't want to make a lateral move and go, oh, I have to do this again. Now, I would have if God said, but I just wanted to be a part of something that was, I wanted to plant, I wanted to water, and I wanted to see the increase. I just had this, I really don't know. I just had this feeling. I grew up in a church as a child, seeing my parents just serve every week, and we stayed at that church. And I think it just got into me to go, what would it be like to be a part of a community and really go with the ebbs and flows of a community. There's an old movie, and I'm showing my age. It's called Mr. Holland's Opus. That movie touched me because it's basically, the story is this music teacher at this school back in the 60s, and he stayed 70s, 80s, 90s, and he was there where it was he was, of course, teaching music. So he was teaching the Beatles at the beginning, and then it turned into hip hop, and he was a part of all those ebbs and flows in the same school, and being able to get to the end of the life. I won't, I'm not trying to tell how the movie ends, but to get to the end of your life and go, I can see that season. Boy, it was in the 90s that I poured into that young guitar player, and look at him now. And it was in the early 2000s that, man, we were able to have a choir, and I saw that young person come up, and they discovered their ability to lead a song or to lead worship, and that was attractive to me. I didn't want to just jump around and be career minded about it. I just wanted to plant and see watered and see the increase. And so that movie always just, I was like, that's what I want. I want at the end of my life to be able to look across the stage and go, that was back in the 90s, and that was early 2000s. And boy, that 2019, I remember when this person came in, and I had coffee with them and I poured into them. That's just super attractive to me, And I don't think moving to a lot of churches, you get to get your wheels under you enough to be able to live that out. That, I don't know. I'm the rare one, and I think,
not as rare as you think, brother. Just look across the table.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think that's why I'm here, because we have that in common. But I don't know. It was just always attractive to me, and then I just began to try to, I did reach a place where I was like, okay, I feel like I've done everything I can do here, right. But and with the music, and then I just began to seek and pray and fast and go, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And I was a little frustrated. I was a little frustrated with how things were going in the church, and I just always had in my mind I was never going to make a move like that. I think leaving a church is easily the top 5 most important decisions in your life. And some people don't look at that way. It's like, I'm tired of this church. Let me go over here, and we're just going to go over here. And I feel convicted about that, honestly. I think it's top 5 most important decisions of someone's life is to find a church, plant, serve, and grow with it. Ebbs and flows, highs and lows, just being a part of that body and that community, I think is so good. So I remember reaching around it was around 2005, 2006. The music was great, choir. I mean, it was everything that we built, and it was great, but I felt unfulfilled. So it was in that I began to seek the Lord. And then out of that, it's like it took me back to those cassette tape days. And so then I said yes to some unrelated things. So I began to go to my pastor and go, hey, would you mind if I just took some men out for coffee one by one just to check on them? And he, Pastor Danny, he was like, absolutely, go. He goes, in fact, put it on the church card. He just empowered me. And I remember just sitting across breakfast, and I didn't ever do this before. I'd keep up with my team, but I would just say, hey, I just want to let you know you're appreciated and you're loved. He's like, really? And I said, yeah, Pastor Danny thinks a lot of you. And they would go, really? I was like, yeah, he does, man. And I just began to build bridges from them to the pastor's heart. And I didn't know at the time what was happening. He was preparing me for the next season. And I remember being so joyful in that. And I'd go home at night with my wife Holly, and I would lay in bed and I'd start crying, and she's like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I just went and met with a couple of guys and just told them that man, they're doing a good job and I'm here for them, and they're loved and they're appreciated. And I said, she goes, well, why are you doing all this extra stuff? Because it wasn't about a job title, it wasn't about a pay increase. It was just, I just had to say yes to something that was at the time unrelated to what I was called, what I was assigned to do. And she goes, why are you doing this? I said, I don't know. And I would lay there in bed and I said, I just feel like it's associated with my future. And I didn't know what that meant, Clay. I didn't know what that meant. I just remember saying yes, but feeling this, getting out of bed, and it's like, who can I go? And God was just forming in me a shepherd's heart. And I was taking care of choirs and bands, but a more of a global shepherd's heart. And I didn't know it. I didn't look for it. And I wasn't even preaching at the time. I mean, I wasn't even doing all that. I just wanted to love the people. But I felt like, okay, that frustration of the season started drifting away, and I had a new assignment, So I don't know. That's kind of what has formed me to be able to stay, is like God just began. I just had, I think saying yes is the hinge to the door. If you can just say yes, because not every door is the door. It's just the entryway to the door. And so many times we look at that one door and go, that's not my door, and they spend a whole life of going, I can't go in there, that's not what I want. That's not what I desire. But even David, when he was anointed, and then he was appointed, and then he walked in authority, and it never was in the same season. And so he was anointed, when Samuel come and anointed him to be king. I can just imagine him in a room with his brothers, and they've all been looked over, and he's got this oil that's pouring over him. And I'm sure he just looked at his dad. I'm just creatively thinking, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And he probably says, go take care of the sheep.
There you go. Yeah.
Just get back out in the field. And then an appointment came. He gets to take his talent to Saul's house and play the evil spirits away. And then he goes back home. Hey, Dad, what do I do now? Run this food to your brothers that are fighting. Okay. And then he goes and he's now an Uber driver for his dad. Yeah. But he's anointed king, and sometimes anointing an appointment and authority. Then later he becomes the authority of a king, and it's never in the same season. And so many people are so frustrated because they're anointed in this season, but they don't know what the appointment is. So they disregard. But sometimes you got to say yes to something. I'm anointed to preach the gospel, but maybe your appointment is to stand by the door and just greet people. Because if you can't do that, I'm preaching to the choir, of course but if you can't do that, then it's going to be difficult to step in there with the authority that God has.
I see us in the church a lot. we do the comparison game. You know? And we also place different values on different positions. And like the greeter for me is it's a classic example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've heard people say I'm just a greeter. No, you are the greeter. And if that doesn't get you, you are the first impressions team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you only get one chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
At first impressions. That's why when churches first started having parking lot people, I don't know who came up with that. They're a very smart person, whoever it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
I took a couple of our teens to a church convention, and we were probably greeted 4 times from the time we pulled into the parking lot until we got to the door. And these are just all people. And what are they saying? We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
In essence,
good morning.
We're glad you're here
yeah.
today. And my kids, they never seen anything like that. When going back to the Lighthouse, the people that sold us on the Lighthouse was a couple standing at the front door.
Yeah,
made us feel like we had just come home. So I do agree. Whatever the assignment is, that's what God has
absolutely
for you. But there are some guys out there today, and ladies. They're at that struggling stage. They're feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah.
Maybe even discouraged.
Yeah.
In their calling, and they're thinking about leaving. Now they don't have any direction. There's no place to go, but they're feeling unfulfilled. So they're thinking about making a change. What would you say to them today?
Fast the frustration away.
Oh.
Fast the frustration away.
Yeah.
You can't make a good, sound decision and we all know that transition happens.
Yeah.
People move and go to different places. Fast the frustration away. And then I think also look at, because if you don't get the frustration out, you can't hear from God. And I can see the times that I was in that frustrate. I was like, I'm not making a move until I can get my frustration under control. And so I fasted away. So when you get that gone, then you can really pray. Okay, what are you doing? And then I think consider the pastor, consider the leader. We're in a time where so many dynamic preachers and ministers of the gospel, thank God that we have them, but they're so in our face. And then, like you said, the comparison game starts. And so you can see that faithful man that has been leading that church for 10, 15, 20 years that's got good fruit in his life. And sometimes we can get so pulled by the cool. And that's what I loved about serving under Pastor Danny. The fruit was on his life, and I knew he was a good man that walked in integrity, and so all of that made a difference to me. I was like, I'm following a good person, and I was a little afraid if I go somewhere else, then am I going to be with somebody else that isn't so locked in to the fruit of a spirit in their life? And so that was a big thing. I think fast the frustration away and really look at your leader and go, am I following a good man? Without the glitz, without the Sundays, without the crowds, without the dynamic sermons, because we know we can preach great sermons and the next week we could lay an egg. And without all of that, is he a good man? I think that's a key thing, is really look at those two things. So
every week we try to give a nugget to someone, something they can walk with. And as I was thinking about our time today, I was thinking of a verse, Matthew chapter 25, verse 23. It says, the master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in the small things.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to give you more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. And then you had mentioned in Galatians chapter 5, one of the fruits of the Spirit is faithfulness.
Yeah.
We overestimate events and we underestimate faithfulness.
Well, that's so true. Boy, say that again. Say that again for me. Say that again for me.
We overestimate events.
Yeah. Boy.
And Sunday can be an event.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we we undervalue
faithfulness. Boy, that's so good.
You know, if you want to make a difference, it's really, really simple, and that is do, Kelly, what you're doing. That's just being faithful. If you want to have that long-term fruit, you got to go someplace, plant, and say, God, this is. I mean, first off, you got to hear the voice of God. Where is it the Lord wants you?
Yeah.
And then once you get there, and sometimes we all walk through these seasons where things are a little dry, man. You got to go, what?
Yeah.
Are you still? But by the way, Lord, you did call me here, yeah, right?
Right.
Is everything okay? And when we get in those seasons, people ask me, "What do you do?" Well, my admonition is, "What is the Lord told you to do last?"
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the last thing He said to you? Go back to that and go, okay, this is what He's asked me to do, and can you continue to do that until He speaks to you again?
Amen? Right. You know, and I think those dry seasons, and I just immediately thought about my Pastor Danny. He was very intentional about making sure that I had opportunities to be refilled and with conferences, and and that was so. I need to thank him for that, because he was so intentional about going, hey, go to this conference, more the worship conferences at the time, and that was really. That was water into my soul, and that allowed me to prop myself up, because it's when you're faithful in that one church for so long. I mean, all you know is those people, and and it can become so routine, and so absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we're on the same journey that you are on facilities.
Yeah,
God has blessed both of us.
right. Yes, sir.
We were talking beforehand about construction, and one of the things that you said that really spoke to me, because it's something I'm a firm believer in: buildings are a tool. Mm-hmm. They're not a mausoleum. So needless to say, we're not building a mausoleum. We're building something that can reach as many people as possible for Christ. So there are people out there, they've been hearing our story for a while.
Yeah,
we're not quite as far. You not only have broken ground, but you guys have got some walls up, and by the time this is aired, it'll actually be dragged to dry it out again, or it can go back to work, right?
Yeah, right.
But why would you tell people they should partner with us and help us with our dream?
Oh, I mean, as far as Dallas Metro, come on. I mean, the impact is so powerful for so long. We're talking about longevity, I think it's because of the difference. I mean, we live in a society, as we all know, where the attack is great on kids, and we feel it. Every church feels it, and the ministry to reach the next generation it's got to be the main thing. And I'm excited about already what God is already doing with the facility, and we've talked about the limitations, and so I encourage you and everybody that's watching this is to pour into the next generation through Dallas Metro, because what happens when we stop that? We do our part with our community and our church, but we're talking about a global ministry, talking about a citywide ministry that has made an impact. So I encourage each and every one to let's get this rock out of. I know you said there's a lot of rock under the surface. We need that rock removed so we can get everything moving forward. So I can't wait to step over and step in and see the facilities, and it's time. In Jesus' name, it's time. I know that, again, we've had lunch, we've shared, and you've come over to our facility and walked around and prayed and just spoken into my life, and thank you for that. Just goes to show your heart that you're not just trying to take care of yours, but you're looking at the kingdom. You're looking at this through kingdom eyes, and so thank you for being an encouragement to me. And I encourage you. Encourage you that God is working, and God is already providing in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thanks for being here today, brother. It's been
Honored,
Yeah.
and thank you for all you do, and thank you for this opportunity. We've just had such a great time.
Glad you're here. Hey, folks, I hope you've been blessed today. I'm confident there's somebody out there that you're thinking about making a move. I hope what you heard what Pastor Kelly said, that was to fast through that. Fast through your frustrations. I might write that down. That might turn up in a book someday. That was good stuff, brother. I'm asking you today, if you haven't already, would you go to our webpage, dallasmetro.org, click on All In. That's our campaign. Look at the pictures there. We've had the first initial meetings with the city, so we're working through the building process right now. As soon as that's finished, as Kelly said, we need to move some rock, okay? But in order to do that, we need people like you partners. So I'm asking you today, would you do this in faith?
Yeah.
I know we're living in difficult times. We're all uncertain, but you know what? We can still trust the Lord.
Amen.
God is still in control. Let me say that again. God is still in control. I'm asking, would you pray today, Lord? What would you have me to do to help Metro reach the next generation for the Lord Jesus Christ? Thanks for being with us. I'll see you next week, friends. God bless you. Bye-bye.